Welcome to my channel. Today we are going to create a textured layer masterboard using lots of techniques. Don't want to do a masterboard? You can use the same techniques to create a background for an art journal or mixed media piece. So I'm starting off, I'm working on a 11 by 17 copy paper. That's my base, and I'm grabbing some items out of my collage bin. This bin that I just showed, I keep all the little bits and they just stay here, so when I want something I just grab that bin and I have easy access. When the bin gets full, I sort it out and I file things more permanently away, or I get rid of them. So I'm just gluing down. This is stenciling that I have done on the excess napkin plies. This makes great collage items. The napkin goes translucent, but you get some texture, and then you have the pattern. So this saves me a lot of time because I don't have to grab out the paint, I don't have to grab out the sponge. I can just rip and glue it down. So creating a masterboard or a background using that is a great time saver, and you can use this at the beginning of the page like I am, or later on after you've put color down, because it does go translucent where the white is. You'll see whatever color's underneath it peeking through. I've kept this video in real time, and that just gives me the opportunity to add little tips and tricks along the way. So when I do tissue paper, collage papers, or on the napkins like I'm using here, I will take out several and I will do a mass production. I will do a stash builder, and then I have all of them, whether they are filed in a file in my filing system, or like this one, it's made it into the collage bin, the excess collage bin. It just never got filed back. I am using Fluid Matte Medium by Liquitex to glue everything down. And I'm putting a coat underneath and then on top. So when you're creating a masterboard or a background, because basically that's the same thing, a masterboard you just turn into multiple makes and use for multiple projects, whereas a background is a one and done kind of situation. You want interest, you want layers of interest. So this is layer one. We've got some pattern, and we have multitude of stencils here. We have not retroburst. I'll list the stencils that were used in the creation of this in the description box below. Quadrifoil reverse, that's it. Now I also had in that collage bin some music paper that I had printed out. I think this was like a free printable music paper, and it had this lovely brown tone, and I like the scale of the notes. So I'm just going to glue that on, and this again is adding that second layer, another fine detail. And it's adding that color, which does peek through at the end. This music paper really didn't get covered up in the final. Now my collage bin is very, very full, but if you had a smaller collage bin, it could be a time you would always make a masterboard using whatever's in there and use it up. It's one of the reasons I like doing and using Masterboards. And really, there is no right or wrong placement when you are doing it. Because you don't have, when you're making a masterboard, you don't have a set end plan in place. So all you're doing is just having fun, playing with the items, following your instincts, and just enjoying the process. So I'm searching in the bin. Are there any other items? I figured, no, I'm just going to make sure I used up all the napkin, and now I'm using up all this sheet music. If you don't have fluid matte medium, you could use gel medium, but I do recommend the matte medium as it gives a nice matte finish. You don't have those little bits of shine coming through. So once that's dry, I am taking some gesso and just kind of softening all the edges. And I want to make sure that I have gesso wherever the white paper is still showing, because I'm going to do the technique of removing paint through the stencil, and that works better if the surface has been gessoed. If it's raw paper, it tends to soak into the paper, so it's really hard to remove it. And I go between using a makeup sponge, using my finger to spread the gesso here. This just softens it. It makes everything kind of work together. It knocks back some of the pattern, if you will. And it makes it all look like it's now one, all to working together. Whereas before it really looked like items that were just glued onto the page. If you get some gesso where you don't want it, just grab a wet rag and wipe it off. This is the time when you're making a masterboard or even doing a background. Just have fun. Experiment. Try things out. And then we need to make sure that this is dry before we do the next step. So I decide before I do the removing paint through a stencil, I want to add more pattern. And I'm going to use a couple of my favorite DIY mark makers. Now this circle is actually a trivet that I picked up at the dollar store. And I am putting Prussian blue on it with a makeup sponge. And then I'm going to use it as a stamp. And I could press on it. I thought, oh, I'm going to use a brayer to get a good pressure. And look at that lovely mark making. We have got this circles, and I'm just going to continue doing that. So here I'm adding a little bit of color. I'm starting my color story. It's going to have Prussian blue, and I'm continuing to layer. So we've had 2 layers, then we put the gesso, so that could be a 3rd layer, and then this is the 4th layer. I just love this trivet. It just works so well. It's silicone, so the paint comes off of it really easy, washes off. And I'm not looking for perfect. It doesn't have to be all dark, dark Prussian blue. It can be imperfect. Remember, this is just marks. This is interest in the background. But you do need to have a bit of thickness there. What I should have done is got out my jelly plate and put the paint on it and then used it as a stamp pad. But I was too lazy to do that. So you want the paint kind of globby here. You want some thickness or variation at least. Because I'm not getting much paint transfer with this right now. Now here's the other mark maker that I am going to use. This is a sink liner, but before I do that, I am going to do some smooshing. So I'm grabbing a sheet of acetate, which was a piece of acetate that came from some packaging that I'm just reusing. I'm putting a little bit of burnt sienna here because I like the look of the Prussian blue with the burnt sienna. I'm diluting it a little bit, and then I'm going to flip the acetate and smoosh in a few places. And depending if there's gesso underneath where I'm doing it or just raw paper, it's going to look slightly different. And I'm just adding till I think of something else to do. Just adding more here and there. This is very random, very organic. And then I'm drying it before I move on. So now I'm applying this turquoise cobalt teal color with the makeup sponge onto the paper, grabbing the quadrifoil stencil and removing the paint through the stencil. And that leaves the pattern. It gives you the opposite of the stenciling. And this works best if the surface underneath has gesso or a coat of paint or somehow is made non-porous. And you can see some of that came off really easy. Where it's not coming off, that was raw paper. So that gives you variation even though I'm doing the same technique. So I'm putting on the paint, put the stencil there. Whoop, I want to go the same way. And using a baby wipe or damp cloth, just remove the paint through the stencil. And I find this does better doing it section by section like you see me doing, because you don't want that paint to dry before you remove it. So have gesso underneath and then do blocks of it. So now I'm going to do regular stenciling with the burnt sienna. Using the same stencil that I did removing paint through a stencil, the quadrifoil stencil. So that's going to give the positive and the negative of that stencil. And I like that. That always looks really interesting in a background or on a masterboard. Burnt sienna, cobalt, teal, turquoise really looks scrumptious together. It is a really good color combo, primarily because they're across the color wheel from each other. They are complementary colors, and that's why it works. Wanted to add it on a little bit more, go a little bit further here. So I just lined up the stencil and add some more stenciling. You can see every single layer, every single pattern. Now I grabbed the Harlequin stencil and the Prussian blue, which I did with the circles, my DIY stamp. I'm just adding a little bit of this in there. Some areas are getting more than others, and that's okay, because my plan with the Masterboard is to cut it up and use it in various projects. So not every part of it needs to even look the same. All the stencils you see here that I'm using are from the Crafters Workshop, and you can get them at one of the 3 affiliate links down below at NinnysNapkins.com. There's a coupon code at Amazon and at TCW Shopify store. So shop around and get the best deal. Do you create with these colors? Let me know in the comment section. Minus drying time, this Masterboard took approximately 30 minutes. So it's a great thing to do when you want to create something, but you do have a time limit. This stencil is called Swiss Dot, and I'm coming in with that cobalt teal, turquoisey color, and just adding some dots. I had the bigger dots from my DIY Mart Maker, and I just wanted to add to that. with each of the marks and each of the stencils or stamps that I've used, I'm using various sizes. And that leads to more interest as well. So here is that dish or sink liner, and it's a piece of it. Love this. It makes such a nice mark maker. And I am grabbing my thick gesso. And I am placing it on the sink liner. And I'm going to use that as a stamp. Every time I go to Dollar Tree, Dollarama, I'm looking for inexpensive sink liners and things with texture that I can use as mark makers. Now this is putting texture and pattern. It's giving that white color, which I leave. So it's knocking back the other patterns somewhat. And it is giving some wonderful texture. And you'll see that in the close-ups at the end of this video. And the nice part is, because I'm going to make multiple things out of this background, I only have to have that mess once. But every one of those projects, and I think I make 6 different things out of this, have texture. And again, I'm not trying to get a perfect stamp. This is very imperfect, very organic, very yum, grungy. And because I want texture, I'm making sure that the thickened gesso there's a lot of it there when I'm stamping into it. I don't want just the pattern, I want to get that texture. People ask, like, how do you know when your masterboard's done? You just get to a point and say, yep, this is where it's done. I like it here. And until you get to that point, you just keep adding more layers. So now that everything's dry, I'm deciding what I'm going to make. Now in the past, I used my window templates, and I've done 4x4 canvases, 6x6 cards, art journal pages, different ones, but I wanted to do something different with this masterboard. But I'm just showing you these window templates that helps you isolate the area and see what it looks like. So I'm going to go in circles. So I made myself a circle template. This is 4 inches in diameter. And I am going to cut circles out of my masterboard. I have no idea, and I had no idea what to make with them other than ATC coins. But I thought, you know what? I want to do something different from what I've normally done. So I'm going to cut this apart, and I find what looks good, and then I'm tracing the lid that I used to make my window template. Which leads to a little bit more waste, but I really wanted to have, if I was doing the coins, I wanted to have a composition that I liked. So I'm just going to go around and make more circles using my window template. And you can see how lovely they are. You can play with the placement. Now, at this point, I don't have any idea what I'm doing for focal images, what I'm going to do with this. And you can see there that music paper that was down there in that second layer still shining through. I could have sped up this part of the video, but I wanted to leave it in because there's a lot of thinking time and a lot of indecisions. Usually I end up using almost every little last bit of the Masterboard. I don't want to waste any, but I don't know why I didn't use that part of it. I really like that with the dark blue in there. I like where you get all the different shades. You get the Prussian blue, the cobalt teal, and the burnt sienna. Whereas this one right here, it's all blue. Then I decide maybe I want to do a card base, but wasn't quite room anymore. I had already made my decision. So I'm bringing out my templates before I do more circles, because I really don't know what I'm going to do with the circles at this time, and I'm kind of second guessing myself. Composition book. And then I remind myself, no, do something different. You've made the same kind of things each time. Stretch yourself, challenge yourself. So I grab the template for a tag and I decide that, okay, I'm going to do so many circles and then I'm going to do the tags. So I do have enough space to get a couple tags out of here. So I'm going to trace those out in a minute. And so I'm going to have circles and tags, and that's what I'm using with the Masterboard. So I have 4 circles, and then I had part circles, which I can combine to make a circle, or I can use it somehow, and 2 tags. And then I have bits left over, which I can just collage together to use if I need to. But you're going to have to wait for the next video to see how I use these to finish off. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you're not already a subscriber. Click on the bell, and that way you'll be notified when the next video is up. Until next time, go get creative.